The escalating violence in the Middle East has prompted a major shift among Arab American voters here at home. This is a voting bloc that historically favors Democrats 2-1. But take a look at this. There's a new poll from the Arab American Institute. It found 46% support former President Trump compared to 42% for Vice President Harris, within the margin of error. In an interview with 60 Minutes, Harris was pressed about the Biden administration's support for Israel.
The work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles, which include the need for humanitarian aid, the need for this war to end, the need for a deal to be done, which would release the hostages and create a ceasefire. And we're not going to stop in terms of putting that pressure on Israel and in the region, including Arab leaders.
Joining us now, Chris Hahn, News Nation political contributor, and Rina, Shah, political strategist and former senior congressional aide. Chris, let me start with you. Is this an ambiguous answer on Israel and the U.S. support for them defending themselves?
I think that the Biden administration and Vice President Harris herself have been very clear about their support for Israel and the need for them to defend themselves. I don't expect her to solve Middle East peace in the middle of an election. I don't think anybody should. And anybody who thinks that they're going to come in and just wave a wand and fix a problem that has existed for, even before the creation of the State of Israel, there were issues in that part of the world. I mean, going back thousands of years, if you will. It's just a ridiculous thing for people to think. This is a complicated matter, and I think the Biden administration is doing as well as they can. And I think that post-election, when there is a clear leader of this country, who I believe will be Kamala Harris, it'll be a lot easier to work out a negotiated settlement in that region.
Rina, how closely are American voters, in your mind, watching the situation in the Middle East when they look at the priorities that they'll cast their ballot based on?
Barney, war used to feel so far and away to most Americans growing up in the 90s and seeing, obviously talk of Desert Storm being taught to me in my classroom. It felt very remote. And now we, again, are in this moment where we are more technologically connected to everything, not just the ballot box, but to wars that are so far away from us in geographically speaking. They are images coming to our phones, to our computers, to our TV screens that are disturbing. And so I do believe Americans are concerned. And as a proud American born on U.S. soil, I must say, I am concerned about anti-Semitism, but I am also concerned about Islamophobia. There are two things at play here in this election. There's a cultural component here that many of us inside the Beltway were not expecting that would have such a heavy influence in this election. That's one thing. But the other, again, is this sort of sentiment, especially amongst young American voters, that not all of this is black and white and that there is nuance here. So in that demographic, you're hearing talk of trust and priorities, two things that we as strategists talk a great deal about will have heavy influence in this election. But I'm seeing Gen Z really take this moment of what's happening in the Middle East and talking about who they trust more and what they prioritize more.
Chris, Kamala Harris is going to be making the rounds on podcasts, on talk shows in the next 24 hours. What's the expectation from these interviews? And I guess the question being, will she be reaching, or will voters who haven't made up their minds be tuning in to hear what she has to say?
I think that she will be reaching new audience. Hey, now, she's going on Howard Stern. I'm a little concerned that we're going to get a delay in the major Liam Neeson phony phone call that we've all been waiting for. But she's going to reach a whole new level of audience going out there on those shows. And where is Donald Trump? He's only staying in the safe confines of right-wing media. And when he does get asked a difficult question, he doesn't answer it. He rambles on. I mean, I think we should really get a health check on this guy at the moment. So, look, I expect more to come as far as interviews. I think it's great that she's going on podcasts. I think it's great that she's going on 60 Minutes and Howard Stern and Colbert. I like to see her do more. I'm waiting for her to come here with you, Marnie. She's got an open invite to the Aggressive Progressive podcast. We'd love to have her on.
Yep, both candidates welcome to talk about the issues important to Americans here on News Nation. Rina, should Trump be doing more interviews right now? He has done more when you compare the two candidates, but in more unfriendly territory. And why not 60 Minutes?
Well, this media blitz is coming at a time, of course, we're here at the 1 year mark of October 7th, but at a time that's really delicate when I'm talking about geopolitical tensions or about what's important to American voters. So both candidates certainly need to be wherever they can be to reach the demographic that is going to determine the outcome of this election. I've been here with you many times, Marty, talking about the outcome, where it's going to be determined and who it's going to be determined by. But let me go a step further to say, because we are at this 1 year anniversary, it's really important that Donald Trump be speaking to Arab Americans as well. Again, a segment of Americans I'm very familiar with, given my background. Harris actually had some members of the uncommitted movement there at the DNC in August, talking about why they support her. I think to minimize the uncommitted movement is a bad look for either camp. I think their concerns are that they believe, some of them, actually, I've heard this in private conversations I've had with some Arab Americans, believe betrayed by this administration, but they're also not sure about Trump. They believe that Israel has a right to defend itself, but not to indiscriminately bomb and kill its civilians.
Well,
So there is nuance here, and I don't want to get into it about my personal opinion. My analysis here is that the uncommitted movement needs to be courted by Trump as well as Harris. They need to get to the heart of what American people want. Both campaigns can do that by media that's not friendly and friendly to them.
Chris, you want to
next
add?
30 days matters, go everywhere is what I always say.
Look,
Your thoughts on that?
Look, I agree with what Rina says. I think you got to go to media that is friendly and unfriendly and try to reach every voter where they are. Generally speaking, foreign policy does not play a huge role in a presidential election. The exception here might be in the state of Michigan, where that Muslim bloc may make up the difference in that state. And it is a very important state for Harris to win the presidency. So it is very important she does it. But look, I think voters need to understand and be listening to what Donald Trump is saying at his rallies. I mean, the speech that is coming out of his mouth about what he would do in the Middle East and what he would do here at home. I mean, suggesting that people won't even acknowledge that they are Harris supporters because they might get beaten up. I think that's a little crazy, and I think it's over the top, and it is un-American, more importantly. And I think that all voters need to be paying attention to that, especially if you're concerned about wars around the world and violence. You got to think about how this man is speaking and what he might do as president.
Chris and Rina, as always, thank you both.
Thank you, Martin.